You got it. Okay.
We're in.
We're in. So authority, hot topic with men, hot topic these days. And Peter and I threw this question back and forth, what is authority and how do we relate to it specifically as men? And so Peter, if you could advance to the first slide here. In any moment, we have two questions that we can ask in determining how we're relating to authority. And we put together a grid that we'll throw up here on the screen to really make a distinction between where am I with respect to authority? Am I in fear or am I in service? Basically, am I reactive and looking out for my own needs, or can I include the needs of others? And then along the other axis, where is authority with respect to me? Is authority something that's internal? Is it within me, within my own experience, or is it something out there that I'm seeing out in the world that's detached from me? And obviously both of these they're axes, right? They're spectrums. And so it's not absolute, you're on one side or you're on the other. But this is just to give a distinction in terms of in any moment, where are you on this grid? As men, certainly we can see examples of when people are not aware of this and what happens. Because if we let this run as a default, that's when we end up with problems. And certainly we've seen the historical problems of when men in positions of power are not asking themselves these questions. I'm going to turn it over to Peter to dive in deeper.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. So down in the bottom left, when we are relating to an external authority from a place of fear, we can recognize that there is a general experience we can call conditioned to collapse. So what we're looking for here is not so much like what is the political experience of authority in the world, but more like what is our literal felt experience with respect to authority, i.e. whoever's in charge, who's setting the rules. So when the rules are coming from outside of us and we're in a place of fear, that can be as simple a thing, it can manifest as simple a thing as, being easily marketed to because I'm scared that I need to buy this particular contraption. And so I'm easily swayed, but it can be as bad as, I need to follow this political movement because if I don't, something bad's going to happen. And so under this condition to collapse, we talk about it's really the place of, but who am I to speak out? Or I don't have anything to say. This is the place of the imposter syndrome, right? As we lead as men, as fathers, as partners, as leaders in companies, as entrepreneurs, this sense of like, but it's not for me to say. We can notice that same relationship to really authority is kind of what can then turn into, in its worst state, a kind of police state, right? So if we don't take responsibility for our own authority, we're in the kind of shadow of humility, in the sense that healthy humility is like, oh, my voice is one of many. And the shadow of that is, well, but my voice doesn't matter. And this is also a privilege bypass in the sense that for people, in particular men and white men, who aren't necessarily going to feel the bite and the pinch of abdicating leadership, we get to kind of sit back and have the bad people be the leaders and sit back and sort of, point out what's wrong while abdicating our own leadership. And so there's a call to noticing if we're located in this quadrant, relating with fear with an authority that's outside of us, either on a small scale in our family, our community, or a large scale. So I'll kick it to Andrew now for the next section.
Thank you. So at the bottom left here, in fear and with authority outside, or sorry, going bottom right, in fear and on authority from within, this is, I know better, and I need to fight the authority um, that's out there, or I need to fight the circumstances. And Peter, if you could advance the slide here. So this is the rebel without a cause. The person whose stance in the world is basically, fuck you, don't tell me what to do, you don't know better. And at its extreme, this stance takes us all the way to civil war. It's people who each know better, all opposing each other. I'm the only right. And you can see this playing out in the world right now, where there's people sort of polarizing into their own corner and not willing to see authority in anyone else. And yeah, so you have bullies and demagogues. And so these are people who are willing to assert authority against other authority. And it's basically the pissing contest, trying to exert more authority than the other person in order to prove a point or to win. And shadow dignity is basically what this impulse is trying to get at, or trying to approximate, because real dignity is unconditional. Shadow dignity is, if I can just prove that the other person is wrong, maybe I'll feel right, if only for a moment. One other thing here is there's human authority, right? There's, fuck the government, don't tell me what to do sort of opposition. There's also natural authority. And this is where, as men, we've gone so far off track, not listening to the authority of nature, and basically using extraction, using technology to try and subdue the authority of nature, including our own internal nature. Trying to get around our own rhythms in terms of our health and seasonal rhythms. I want bananas every day, the whole year, and I don't care what it takes, because I know that that's what I need. So this ends up in civil war. Like I said, this is basically people pitted against each other with this sense of inner authority run amok. So I'll kick it over to Peter for the next one.
Great. I heard Michael Meade say something like, I don't remember what it was, but it was like, if you want to, if leadership and power occurs to you as this kind of ugly, shadowed, controlling thing, then all that means is nothing in the world is going to change. You're just not going to be involved in the decision making, right? And so that's the bottom two quadrants. It's like, leave it to them, either on the bottom left, or I'm the one who's in charge, but from a place of fear. And so swinging it around the axis, as we have a kind of orientation that shifts from, really it's when we become mission and values aligned. Really it's when we become in service to something worthy that we find worthy, something a larger radius than our own sort of corner of our bank account and our property and our small community of people. And this is where we step in and recognize, oh, I'm actually a steward. Who am I not to lead? Who am I not to speak? I actually have to bring my voice forward, in particular for those people who, as oppressed peoples, can't necessarily lead or speak without endangering themselves. And so right now I'm speaking to white men in particular to say, it's actually really important that white men use our voice to bump out the guards, the bumper guards, so that more oppressed peoples can have more movement to move through. Because there's a way in which, if we don't speak, we go back down into those two quadrants of the bullies and the demagogues, and just being sort of oppressed by this fascist state. So this is a place of true dignity. This is a place of recognizing our worth. This is a place of being in our seat. This is a place of of moving in the world with not that sense of, well, I'm the one who's right, but that sense of, I have a place, it is important, and it's not the most important, but it's worthy, and I'm worthy. And of course, this requires courage, and it requires mastery of these 4 capacities that we're going to talk about here in a minute. Andrew.
Moving up to the last quadrant here in upper left, and what we call conscious participation. So where collapse is the response from fear, moving up the axis into service, conscious participation becomes relating to outer authority by recognizing the validity of other people's authority in other systems, including natural systems. My voice is one of many. How can I help? So this is really recognizing that leadership and power are a participatory process. And true humility here is being willing to speak up, being willing to assert, being willing to lead, but knowing that our own power is grounded in something outside of ourselves. I like to think of some of the indigenous people when Western European settlers were coming in, and they basically told the armies, told the conquerors, you can't take away our power because our power is in the earth. It's not my power is me. My power is connected to something bigger than me. Mm. And humility, right? The word root is humus, soil. Literally, my power, my participation is grounded in the earth. Mm-hmm. And it's grounded in community as well. And this requires courage because you're venturing into paradox. Whenever you have multiple people, multiple systems, you're going to have multiple right answers. And it's a scary place to hang out sometimes, to really enter into that discussion, knowing that you're going to have to face some stuff that really pushes your edge. And again, so mastery of the 4 capacities that we're going to go into, Peter's going to share here in just a moment.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really feeling that, Andrew. I love that humus as like sort of root metaphor, and not even and beyond metaphor, but actual real genuine ground, being connected to earth. It's like, who do I serve? Look no further than the ground beneath your feet. So we came up with 4 capacities for conscious service, and those of you who've been on these calls are going to start, I think I'm starting to notice a pattern in kind of what we're seeing and the distinctions that we're making. And so I'll just kind of fly through these. The capacity to self-authorize. What is our sense of our values? What is our sort of practice and our progress in enacting and living from and standing for those values and a mission in the world? How easily are we pushed off that, which takes us to this capacity to self-parent, to self-regulate? How solid is our firm stance in the earth? How solid is our it doesn't mean that we never get triggered. It doesn't mean that we never get angry. It doesn't mean that we never feel the depth of sadness, but it does mean that we recognize when we have been pushed off our center, so that we're not then co-opted by, a friend of mine, Marcus Rainerson, said, if you don't claim your center, the world will do it for you. And you could replace world with your partner, your job, just the demands of the world, or, the government. Capacity to discern. Is this voice in myself? Is this voice from outside of me? Is this the voice I need to be listening to? Who is that voice serving? That voice that's telling me that I need to do X, Y, and Z. And lastly, this capacity to be with discomfort and death. Really what this all boils down to as men is, what is our relationship to the fact of our ending? What is our relationship to the fact of our own, intimate sort of end? We're in service of the earth, and to the earth we will return. And so and death being the sort of mother archetype, but along the way. Discomfort in the body, sensation, loss of control, ability to surrender. These are all sort of signposts on the way for us as men to recognize, oh, there I go. I'm not in my center. And so with that, I think Andrew's going to tee up the shares here.
Yeah. I can feel the weight of the topic too.